CigarClub podcast all up in your ear. Talking all that good you wanna hear. Stogies, bourbons, and everything in between. Griff and Pugh are not experts by any means, so sit back and light one up. Make sure you got something good in your cup. Happy spoken, now enjoy the program. Thank you for being part of the CigarClub fam.
What's up, Cigar Club family? Welcome back to another episode of the Cigar Club podcast. I'm Pugh, and along with me, as always, is Griff Howie. Thank you all so much for listening every week and leaving your thoughts and feedback on each episode. We love reading them. If this is your first time joining us, thank you so much for tuning in. The Cigar Club podcast is where we talk about all things cigars with you, the Cigar Club family, every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Eastern. On today's episode, we have two special guests with us to talk about a brand new cigar that'll be coming to the market in boxes here in September. But before we jump into it, Griff, it's been a while since I've seen you. How you been? What you
Top
smoking?
of the afternoon
What's
to you,
going
Pugh.
on, buddy?
Last time we were together was in Nashville, Tennessee.
It was that about a month
I think.
ago? It
Have we
seems
done
like?
anything since then?
No, you've
was
been
the
on
last-
vacation, living the life.
Yep, was on vacation for about a week and drinking wine, way too much wine in wine country. And I thought I was going to cleanse my liver this week, but I've got bourbon night tonight, and it's Labor
Bourbon
Day
Thursday,
weekend.
baby.
So
Not
much
happening.
for that idea. But I'll take more
It'll be
liver
next
pills
month.
and we'll be okay.
Exactly. Well, your trip out to Napa was certainly, I think it made everyone jealous that was tuning in and following you along on social
Yeah.
media.
It
You were
was-
posting. I was proud of you.
It was amazing. Yeah, I was trying to post and get some good pictures, but my hand always had a glass on it for the most part, or holding a glass rather. So
Yeah, it happens.
I've had worse trips.
Well, we're glad to have you back in one piece, and maybe even if you did leave part of your liver in California.
Yeah, it's all right. It's a good place to live. Leave your liver.
It is. You just have to continually go back each year to get it.
That's right. That's right.
Well, enough about us. No one's here for us for this episode. We've got two absolutely amazing guests. One is a returning guest, and one is a brand new guest for us. So let's go ahead and get them in. Griff, what are we smoking, and who's joining us today?
We've got no other than Joshua Harbuski. Josh, how do you say it? Harbuski?
Josh Habursky.
It's as it says, but I can never say it right. And an easier, better-looking guy, John Adams from Liberty Cigar Company as well. Guys, how are you?
Good. Doing good. I feel like it's a rite of passage being a second-time guest. Like you were giving Alec Rubin all kinds of crap on the last, and I was the new guy. So you were being very nice, and now I see how it is. I see how it is.
Yeah, once you have one podcast, the rest is history. So
It opens the doors for Griff to just
it opens the doors.
roasting
Yeah.
begins.
So glad you guys could join us. We're smoking, to answer your question, Pugh, the Lobbyist, which is a collaboration between Liberty Cigar Company and Josh here. So we're excited to have you guys on.
Well, it's been a fun project, putting it together. And of course, we really enjoy working with Cigar Club. This is my second podcast because we did the Chicago typewriter earlier this year, which I smoked one last night.
I saw the picture on Instagram. I thought it was today.
I talked to Alec. I think batch number 2 is in the works. So
That's awesome.
I was a little bit worried, obviously they transitioned with Alec Bradley and now Forged in general. And so, we're in conversation. I'm like, I'm running out myself. And that's a great cigar. I have
Absolutely.
a pop-up shop in Erie, Pennsylvania, my hometown, Fridays and Saturdays. And the number 1 and 2 selling cigars are the Chicago typewriter, and then John Adams and I, our first release together in collaboration, the Carronade, which
cool.
is, John is a fascinating person. He and his wife, Ellen, are one of the most creative duo in the cigar industry, especially when it applies to historical projects. And I had reached out to John couple years now, and we've been friends. We were in Savannah last month talking about new ideas, and a lot of times I'll come up with an idea. He already is doing something with it, and then we'll make some little tweaks here and there. And the story of the lobbyist, and he'll tell you about all of the tobaccos and the creative process, but I wanted to do something. I celebrated 10 years lobbying this year.
That's right. Congratulations.
For those of you that don't know, I'm the chief lobbyist for the cigar industry working at PCA. And I'm like, what better way to celebrate 10 years than to release a cigar to friends and family? So that's what we did, a little party here in DC. Mm-hmm. And I had asked John a couple months before, hey, can we do a cigar? And he had said, Ulysses S. Grant, the story, and I'll let him tell that. But it kind of came together, and it's a phenomenal cigar. I love the Robusto the most. I think John is a Churchill guy on that cigar, but he can correct me if I'm wrong.
Pugh smoking the Toro. I've got the Robusto.
Yep. Robusto is great.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Yeah,
so
I'm smoking the Toro too. I've sold out of the Churchills, but I actually want to do that cigar in a Gordo as well. You got to have if you're going to be a lobbyist, you have to be a fat cat at some point.
Yeah, that's true. Well, the story was so cool on the Chicago typewriter. With the size and walking in between meetings in DC, it was like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. For the 10th year anniversary, it makes sense to maybe just relax a little bit and smoke something a little bit larger and enjoy it, right?
Absolutely. And, we combine different projects. I'm a student of history, much like John. And, I mentioned Erie, Pennsylvania, the hometown. I also reached out to a distillery there, cider mill. That's right. They're famous for apple cider, and they, similar to the Chicago typewriter, how we worked and released a rye whiskey concurrently with the cigar. John and I decided to do an apple brandy. The story is Ulysses S. Grant, when he was president, would sit in the Willard Hotel and drink brandy, and most commonly apple brandy, and smoke cigars as lobbyists would come and ask for favors or political side deals and stuff like that. And that's where it really, in the United States, the term gained popularity. So it's kind of an homage to the history of lobbying, myself lobbying, and really I found two perfect partners in Luminary Distilling from my hometown, supporting small businesses there. And then, the creative spirit of John and Liberty Cigar Company, who has an amazing track record working with many more reputable institutions than my lowly self. I mean, John can talk about his work with the White House Historical Association and some of those folks too.
Yeah, John, you might as well just start talking because we could be here a while. And
yeah,
to preface this, there's not really an overall outline here. This is just a conversation. So we are.
Well, I was enjoying smoking and just listening to you guys. I tend to be on the verbose side, so my wife is always telling me, "I don't believe I said that." So I tend to hold my tongue as long as I can. But working with Josh is fantastic. We also work with the White House Historical Association. We do all the presidents. We have 7 different historical series, one of which is the Naval series, which the Oliver Hazard Perry. I decided to do that one first because Josh asked me to. We've got Stephen Decatur, John Paul Jones, a bunch of the early naval heroes coming out. We've got the Washington Commander series, which is beautiful. That's got
they're all beautiful.
George Washington and 10 of his commanders in that one. We even have Benedict Arnold. We gave him a great cigar for his victory at Saratoga, but turned his band upside down for being a traitor. So,
Love it.
A great cigar, and Valcour Island and Saratoga, and he deserves some acclaim. We also did a special collection last year for the White House, and that I don't know if you guys have ever been to the White House, but if you walk into the North Portico, there's a plaque on the floor that Truman put there after the renovation, and it's got the 4 dates on there. we did a cigar that represents each one of those dates, plus John F. Kennedy, because his wife founded the White House Historical Association, which has many duties, and it's we tend to only support privately funded institutions like Mount Vernon and the President's House Collection. If they've got government funding, it becomes a bit difficult to get things approved and done. They approved that design in about 30 seconds, which was nice. But that's got George Washington in there. It's got James Monroe, Theodore Roosevelt, Truman, and then JFK, and it's a great series. We've got
gorgeous presentation.
Oh, thank you. We've got the Founder Series, which has the Founding Fathers. There's 15 in that series, 13 in the actual collector's box. We've got a new series coming out called Duo Libertas. It's the Black Soldiers of the Rev War. Duo Libertas is Latin for twice free. They were first fighting for the freedom of their country, and then they were fighting for their own freedom. And most people don't know this, but they were 20% of the combatants in the Revolutionary War, even though they were only 5% of the soldier population. And that was because in order to be freed, they had to serve for the duration of the war. So whenever they enlisted, they had to go until the end. And so rather than going home after a couple of battles, they stayed. And remarkable series. It's beautiful. And then we've got we're doing all the seminal events in American history, their 250th anniversary. The first one coming up is this December, and that is the Boston Tea Party. So the 250th anniversary of the Boston Tea Party is coming up. And then after that, we're going to do everything from the Virginia Resolves all the way through 1774. And in 75 is going to be full because it's Bunker Hill, and then the founding of the Navy in November, the founding of the Army in June, the founding of the Marines, and the Navy's October, the Marines are November. So that's a full month. And then in 1776, the 250th anniversary of that, we're going to have all the signers of the Declaration of Independence in one collector's box. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We're busy.
That's amazing. No kidding.
Yeah.
When you do a project like that with, for instance, the Lobbyist here, I think perfect example. Obviously, this has Grant on it. Is there a process that you have to go to be able to use his imagery on historical project, or is that something that doesn't necessarily have to be approved by an estate?
Well, where it is questionable, my wife does the artwork, so she drew that. She drew Grant there on the.
Wow.
She's very talented.
Wow.
Yeah, and she's done drawings for. She did Herbert Hoover, even though we got permission. The White House Historical Association goes to Carolyn Kennedy or Margaret Hoover or Susan Ford or whoever we're going to do a cigar for, and they get their approval more or less.
Wow.
To do it, because we try to be respectful. That's one of the reasons we don't have a Reagan cigar yet. We're still working on that, but we've got. And if you go back before the copyright era, everything's pretty much fair game. But
gotcha.
But my wife loves that. We've got the Civil Rights Pioneer series that's coming out in 2 months, and it's got Frederick Douglass and. Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver, and a few people that you don't know. And she did all the drawings for that. And
dang,
they're really cool.
John, when did history start for you, and what was the connection to Josh?
Well, I've always loved history. One of the first things my mother we grew up very poor, but my mother at a flea market found some old pictures of Minutemen. And she got them framed. I think the next door neighbor just put a couple of pieces of scrap wood together and framed it, put it on our wall. And I just love that, the Minutemen, the whole story. But in the 5th grade, my teacher asked us to write the Declaration of Independence. And every day we would come in and we'd write one paragraph, and she would explain it. And she gave us a special paper to write on. And at the end of it, she went to the chemistry lab, and she got a Bunsen burner, and some lemon juice, and she rubbed it on the document and put it over there, and it aged it, and I kept that. I think we still have it. My mother never threw it away, so I think I still have it. So, but I learned a lot about civics and the country and how special it was, and of course my ancestry is tied to it, so that has something to do with it. Although I didn't know that until I was 18, but.
Can you break that down a little bit more? Because you kind of nonchalantly.
Well, I'm a collateral descendant. My 12th great grandfather is John Adams' 6th great grandfather, and
wow.
And my John Quincy's is his 7th great grandfather is my 12th, et cetera, et cetera.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But and we because people have done all that research for me. It's easy. I can go back to the Plantagenet kings and queens of England, which is pretty wild. Wow. I always tell people that my ancestor killed Mel Gibson, Edward I, in Braveheart.
In Braveheart.
Yeah.
So, Josh, when did you come in the picture? Well, I mean, obviously, I could probably guess, but what was the connection there?
So it was a friend of a friend introduced me via email to John, and said, "Hey, this is John Adams. He's in the cigar industry. He's been making these historical cigars, and they included the website." And I looked it up, before I answered the email. And honestly, the moment I saw the libertycigar.com website and John's existing portfolio, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to do a cigar with John. And I had done El Politico originally out of the Pichardo factory. So I had one cigar under my belt going to Nicaragua, kind of learning the process. And I'm, more the creative type. I want to come up with an idea, but, I'm not an expert in the execution of it or the blending process. I'm learning. Like I enjoy that. And that's why I do some of these projects. But, I instantaneously knew that, John and I were going to do some stuff together. And, I think in that initial meeting, I had pitched him on an Oliver Hazard Perry cigar. We went, back and forth on the different ideas. And since then, I mean, we've been friends. We have very similar interests. I was a historical reenactor, in high school. I was a nerd, of course. I still am. Now I'm a collector of historical firearms. So, I initially wanted to be a political history professor, and really the focus was early America. So, cigars and history, there's nobody doing it better than John Adams right now, in my opinion. And he's reliving history through cigars and telling the story. So people are getting educated about history as they buy these cigars, as they receive them. The carronade in particular, each of the leaves has a connection to Oliver Hazard Perry or the Battle of Lake Erie. And John, you might want to go over that battle because it's fascinating.
Yeah, well, Oliver Hazard Perry was a young guy. He was in his late 20s when he died, mid-20s during the Battle of Lake Erie during the War of 1812. He was a courageous man, like a lot of them were in those days, looking for fame and honor, as they said in the early Navy. The carronade is what we call it. The carronade was a short cannon that was designed to be on the upper deck, and it was designed for close quarter fighting. As he comes into the Battle of Lake Erie, the British squadron that's coming down, bearing down on them, has long guns, which are a mile to a mile and a half. In order for him to win the battle, he had to get underneath those guns and endure that initial part of the battle, so that he could then bring to bear his carronades, which fired a 32-pound ball at 500 yards or less. He's on the Lawrence, which is named after James Lawrence, don't give up the ship Lawrence, who had died. They were good friends. he raises the flag up there, and the British destroy the Lawrence. There aren't many people left on board, but he manages to get rowed to the Niagara. He takes command of the Niagara and comes in between the two British ships of war and unloads his carronades on both sides. And in 15 minutes, he destroys the British squadron, which has only happened a couple times in the 600-year history of the British Navy, where an entire British squadron had to surrender. So he's famous for saying, "We have met the enemy and they are ours." One of the great succinct mission encapsulations in the history of the Navy, for sure. But we designed it. It's basically a short torpedo in the shape of a carronade. So cool. It's a unique size, awesome. 57 by 5.5. We used a Brazilian Montefina wrapper because it has that wonderful smoke that is almost brings your eyes to tears when you first light it up. And then the black pepper that stays throughout the entire smoke actually simulates the gunpowder that you would have heard. It's got or smelled in that battle. The wonderful almost oaky essence to it also is if you can imagine yourself in that battle, the splintering oak coming off of the ships as they were bombarded is present there. We've got a Connecticut broadleaf binder, which is a very muscular, almost leather-like, has a little steel essence to it, which obviously stimulates the hand-to-hand combat that they engaged in. And then the interior, the filler, is Nicaraguan and Dominican. It's very, very mild and sophisticated. And most people don't know this about him. After the battle, after the war, he was enlisted as a diplomat. In fact, that was his last mission. He wound up dying at the age of 28, 29 off the coast of South America from yellow fever. They didn't want to bury him there in the Amazon, so they took him to Bermuda. And even though he had just a few years before defeated the British, and that was a British colony, they were so awed by his pluck, if you will. They allowed him to be buried there, which is unheard of as well. So remarkable guy. And so that's how we designed the carronade.
That's incredible. I mean, Josh, I think you nailed it on the head by saying John does an impeccable job of blending history with cigars and using cigars as a platform to tell the stories of the people that they are representing, or whether it be a breakdown like John just gave us, where each tobacco layer kind of has a meaning or an overall purpose to the man or the person that the cigar is representing. And that's one thing that I've loved. I followed Liberty Cigars for a while now. John, we actually had a connection that I didn't know we had up until, I guess, a few years ago. Your shop that was in Alpharetta, Georgia. I grew up in Georgia, and that shop was I don't think it was there when my dad had his restaurant, but lo and behold, it was 3 stores down from a restaurant that my dad had opened back in, early 2000s. So that was a really cool. I went to visit your shop, but it would just had closed down. I know you're in the process of reopening a new shop.
No, when I was building that building, I built the whole building there.
Okay.
And when I was building that, we ate at your dad's place all the time.
That's wild to me. Almost
every other day.
That's crazy. Was it any good?
Yes, it was very good, actually. When you have an old institution, typically you build around it, but it was just Alpharetta's become too valuable.
It's crazy nowadays.
It's $3 million an acre for dirt there now. That's just unbelievable. But I opened up the shop, and it was 500 square feet, and it was beautiful. You can see a picture of it on the left-hand side of the website, but it didn't have a lounge. So I closed it down and concentrated on the online sales, and I'm opening up a 4,000 square foot lounge now. So
I can't wait to go and visit that.
Yeah,
that's going to be amazing. Where's that going to be located?
In Alpharetta. Yeah, it's I bought the property with some partners 2 blocks south of there.
Okay, excellent.
Where the old building was, or the new building that
I'll
I
definitely
built.
have to come up and see it once it opens. Do you have like a time frame when you think it'll be up?
No, we've got our land disturbance permit, but it's so hard to build nowadays. We got a message from Fulton County, infamous Fulton County, that said that we can no longer combine our domestic water and fire meter, that we have to do two separate. So we had to redesign all the civil engineering documents and stuff, just stuff like that.
Why not? Well, let's talk a little bit about the Lobbyist here. And either one of you can go forth. Did the cigar come first, or did the name and the man himself come as the kind of starting point?
I already had a Grant cigar, but I approached Josh and I said, Josh, if you really want to do these cigars, you ought to have one that's actually particular to you, rather than a mobster in Chicago or whomever. And I said, Grant did not invent the term lobbyist, but he popularized it, because after the Civil War, there were so many people wanting to take advantage of the mayhem in the South that he was being approached incessantly, and so he kept saying, calling them, get the lobbyist out of here or what have you. He was polite to some and up to a point, but so I decided to do one that was had a little less body, a little less fullness to it, I suppose, so that everybody could enjoy it. It's kind of one of those cigars that's it's an easygoing, wonderful aromatic smoke, and so
absolutely.
So I used, in the other Grant, I used a war engraving during the Civil War, and this one is when he's president in 1870. My wife drew it, so it's. I have two Grant cigars, but one of them is lighter bodied, and because he mellowed after the Civil War. So
what is can you give the blend breakdown for everyone that's listening?
Yeah, it's an Ecuadorian Desflorado, which is a rare tobacco that is made when the flower starts to bloom. Just before it blooms, they nip the bud, and it sends the upper leaves into a new growth spurt. It brings in that extra sun and nutrients from the soil because it's tricked the plant essentially into another growth period, and it's got it's a wonderfully aromatic leaf.
Very much so.
The people that roll it hate it because it's thin and it's delicate, and but it's really really nice. We used I didn't want to mess up that Desflorado leaf, so we used a Sumatran binder, which it's got a really subtle flavor and it burns very well, but it doesn't change the profile. And we've got Dominican and Nicaraguan in the filler.
Yeah, this cigar, I've waited, Griff and I both have waited to smoke it for this podcast. Incredibly complex, very delicate, but not, it's still nice and, maybe right around medium for me.
Yes.
I love a Desflorado cigar. It's just wonderfully complex and just really shines in this cigar. I think you did a really good job of making sure that was kind of the shining point of the cigar,
right,
and everything else complements it really nicely.
That's right. Yeah.
It's a really good presentation cigar too. So, giving somebody this as a gift, and John has, it labored in his garage building boxes, and we have a few presentation boxes that are, wood with the stamp, which are, great holiday presents. And same thing, with the carronade, the dress box for the Naval series. I mean, they're very unique. I don't see, I get to see a lot of different things in the cigar industry and innovations and creativity. And, John is very special in that attention to detail, creativity, I also would give his wife Ellen a lot of credit.
Oh, sure.
The fact that there's a story and a message behind all of them. And I think with the Lobbyist, I like the more mellow, because if I want to give something, it's an essence of my personality, of the history also, and it's great for that. The Carronade is one of my top 10 cigars that I'm smoking, because I love it's stronger.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if you guys have tried it yet, but John will have to get them one of the Carronades, because that's one that has a wow factor. I mean, they both have wow factors, but seeing both of them together, I think trying the Carronade and the Lobbyist, you see the attention of detail that John has, but also the complexity of blending, where you have stuff that's applies to everybody. And then also more, I would classify the Carronade as for more seasoned cigar smokers.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Cause that it's a big tomahawk ribeye, big bourbon, sit down and
bring it on.
Bring it on kind of thing. Yeah.
That's all me.
That's why I love it. I had to make it robust for what he did, rowing over to Niagara and then going in there knowing he was going to die, and he didn't. Remarkably, it's just he had courage beyond most people's imagination, and he was a young man. I mean, he's younger than all of us here. Certainly younger than me, half my age, but And that's one of the reasons why we do this. We want to tell America's magnificent story, and so people can revere and emulate these people in the past. And if you study somebody long enough, you can always find something of yourselves in them. And when I start doing these, every cigar I've ever done, we have almost 100 now. I write a 10,000 word biography on each one before I do the cigar. That's why
cow.
Josh was always emailing me saying, "Well, you got it yet? How are we doing?" And I just said, I have a process that I go through on every cigar. And
that's crazy.
And there's
I can't do anything.
For Grant, there's certainly I think he's I'm currently halfway, as we were talking. I'm halfway through.
Oh, yeah.
Ron Chernow's
He's a big history buff, so you guys could talk for hours.
We could. History degree. I've been a student of history all my life, so this is a exciting project for us to be able to bring to our Cigar Club family.
Well, it's nice, to see the complement of that, where people hopefully when they get this cigar in the pack, they'll read about Grant and his life and his history, or the Civil, or hopefully it will prompt people to do some of that. I know it's been great working with John and coming up with some of the ideas and being a part of that process. With his wife, Ellen, being the artist behind the drawings. In my cigar room in Erie, I have the actual portraits of both of, Oliver Hazard Perry and Grant. And in there is surrounded by historic firearms and books about history. That's kind of, and I was telling John he's going to have to make a visit to Erie when we finally open the lounge.
Yeah, I can't wait for
and
that
the lounge itself is called the Brig, after the Brig Niagara, and it has that nautical theme. The TVs where people will watch sports have the cannon, or are modeled after cannon ports and things like that. So it's a lot of fun.
2 stops I got to do, one to your place and one to John's. John, when you're working with your wife, are y'all kind of hand in hand with the project, and then also Josh is involved too? Are you waiting for her to finish the drawing? Is she waiting for you to, or is it all pretty seamless?
No, we got a special project where somebody asked us to do in part of the naval series, the chiefs, the notable petty officers, petty officers in the Navy. And so we did the first black petty officer, chief petty officer. We did the Medal of Honor recipient from Pearl Harbor, and then the highest ranking one. And I hesitate to say this, but because I don't want to discredit what she does, but I asked her to draw those. What is today? Thursday?
Yeah.
I asked her to draw those 4 things Tuesday night over dinner, and she finished them this morning. All 4 of them.
Jeez.
And God bless her. Every time she finds out that somebody's young child has passed away, even though she doesn't know who they are, she draws a picture of them, and then we send it anonymously to them. That's how Josh has met her. She's an extraordinary woman, and she managed to get that done in between. So she did 5 drawings in 2.5 days or 1.5 days. It's astonishing to me. So she gets them done long before I get my stuff.
And the parchment that John has, if you ever order from Liberty Cigar, you get parchment, you get ornate wrapping, these stickers, everything's designed perfectly. You also get, a handwritten note from him or Ellen, and he's building the boxes, he's vertically integrated in his own system. And it's fascinating to see. John and I were in Savannah meeting with a business partner, and we had dinner. Ellen was there as well. And in the midst of, touring Savannah, doing a little bit of business and that, they're both sending packages for cigar orders and doing handwritten notes. So, they're some of the most hardworking people in the industry that I know. And, learning and getting to just, sit and chat with John and Ellen has taught me a lot about, business process, about, the complexity of the cigar industry and the unique differences. When you go and tour some of the major manufacturers that are pumping out, 30 million cigars a year, but also, operations that are, small family-owned businesses like John and Ellen, it's a unique social fabric, and all of them have a place in this industry.
Well, I had to buy I bought a van during COVID, a Ram van, and I wrapped it with 8-foot-tall pictures of George Washington and Alexander Hamilton and Teddy Roosevelt, and it's the mobile humidor.
You were doing house deliveries, weren't you?
Well, nobody could get there. People were like going, I need my cigars. And so I said, I'll be there. And I delivered all over Atlanta, and it was wonderful.
Yep.
You've been in Atlanta. You know how the traffic is. It was, I went to Stone Mountain. I went to south of the city, and I had no traffic. It was awesome.
When we tried to visit your shop, it was right in middle of COVID, that June of 2020, I think it was, or maybe it was. Yeah, it was. And, we went to, obviously the shop wasn't open, and we went on your website and saw your deliveries, and we were staying with my parents at the time in Woodstock, and I was like, I wonder if he'd come out here, and we weren't there long enough for you to be able to come out there and make the delivery, or me see if you would, but I was like, that's awesome, doing house deliveries to make sure people have a great cigar to smoke.
Yeah, we deliver, during COVID, we delivered within a south of I-20, which is way down there, but I deliver still north of I-20 all the way. I deliver in Woodstock almost every day. In fact,
that's crazy.
30 seconds ago, I got an order from somebody in Woodstock. So
that's amazing.
Awesome.
One thing
I get to put a audiobook on, and because I try to read between 2 and 3 books a week because I just enjoy it, and one of them is audio because I get to do that. So every time I get an order, it's exciting to me.
Perfect time too.
I lined up a George Washington, which takes about 2.5 hours to smoke, and I just
there you go. Do your routes.
Yeah,
sounds painful.
One thing I think is really cool about Grant is not only the lobbyist tie for you, Josh, but he was also a cigar smoker himself. And one of the pages that I highlighted here, which I was fortunately able to find, is he was talking about his cigar consumption, and he goes, the cigar still served as his trademark, though he scaled back consumption from 20 per day during the war to 10, feeling virtuous in his self-restraint. And I think that's absolutely amazing, the man smoking 20 cigars and cutting back to just 10.
Well, that article came out in Harper's Weekly, and that you're referencing there, and they started sending him, everybody in the North started sending cigars, and so he had a lieutenant travel around behind him and to care for his cigars and soak them in bourbon, and it had to be just right to keep them lit. So it was definitely an industry. So much so that in a subsequent article, he had to tell people to quit sending cigars. He had plenty. And so fortunately, it's interesting. My grandfather was a tobacco farmer, and he would be appalled if he knew that I did a Grant cigar. His grandfather fought the Civil War, and in fact, as a child, he knew several of his ancestors and relatives that were that fought on the Confederacy. Even though I had the Adamses fought on in the 11th Pennsylvania, but when R.J. Reynolds or whatever the tobacco company would come and he'd auction off the tobacco, they paid in cash always. And this was during the Great Depression and shortly thereafter. And if it came to $1,050 for the burlap bundle, he made them round it up. He said, "I am not putting a $50 bill or a $5 bill in my wallet." He wanted no pictures of Lincoln or Grant in his wallet.
That's funny.
But anyway, which is obviously Grant is an extraordinary man, and he was definitely held Lincoln's spirit during Reconstruction. Lincoln wanted to forgive and to invite the South back into the Union, and a lot of the folks didn't want to. So having Grant as president right after Johnson was a godsend for the country.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've learned is just how misunderstood and kind of misrepresented Grant was, and I halfway through, I'm literally right into the beginning of his presidency, so I haven't gotten to that portion yet. But just an incredible read. I think anyone that is enjoying or is a student of history rather, highly recommend diving more into Grant and smoking a Grant cigar at the same time, or the Lobbyist rather, or the other Grant cigar.
When you think about cigar smoking icons throughout history, it really is Grant and Churchill. You know, you have it's two. Every time someone mentions Grant or someone mentions Churchill in the context of a conversation, people talk about cigars, and I think that their characters and their contributions to history are great value to the cigar industry, and it's really cool to be involved in this project that kind of blends individual personal histories, individual creativities, but also we're trying to gain awareness for one of the cigar greats. If there was a Mount Rushmore of cigar people, Grant would certainly be there. Churchill would certainly be there.
George Burns. I am going to do a George Burns cigar at some point, but he smoked a cheap short filler cigar because he needed it to stay lit while he was telling a joke. And because it had to burn hot, so he would only smoke the nice cigars off stage, but on stage he smoked the cheap ones because it would burn hot and stay lit. Sigmund Freud is another one. That famous saying that sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, and that is not true of us. Obviously, our cigars are not just cigars, but Sigmund Freud. Herbert Hoover smoked 20 a day as well. He smoked quite a few in the White House. That's one of the reasons why we did him early in the presidential.
I always think
series.
of Kennedy as well.
Kennedy would smoke a nice little petite Corona, and he had. If you look at some of his photos, you can see all the burn marks in his jackets because he would
really.
He would put them half out on the ground or a ledge or do whatever he was doing, and then he'd stuff it in his coat pocket, and he had holes all in his pocket from where they didn't quite go out. So,
oh, that's too funny.
Yeah, remarkable folks.
Well, Josh, I want to talk about a moment here. You've had a tremendous victory with PCA just not even maybe a month ago. Can you talk about for our listeners kind of what that victory means for PCA, the fight that you've been having since 2016, I believe?
2009.
Yeah, even before then. I mean,
really?
it's been a slog. industry, being a tobacco product, is always under fire. But we've had a series of monumental wins. 3 court cases, and this was the third one with the remedy that was the best possible finality to this saga. There's already more regulations being promulgated, and state things, and that's one of the things. Like it is a significant win. Basically, the FDA's deeming rule or the authority to regulate premium cigars was vacated by the courts. That they didn't follow the process. They failed to adhere to the Administrative Procedures Act. That's what the judge found. So, all these regulations applied to premium cigars are null and void. And there's a definition. It has to meet this definition. The FDA has 60 days to appeal. Our lawyers were saying that, it's unlikely that they appeal. I'm always, until it's across the finish line, I still use that caveat for everything. But it means that, manufacturers and retailers can still have innovation, creativity. We don't need to be bogged down by unnecessarily burdensome regulations. And, we're going to continue to fight for some of that because, in this, the definition of itself doesn't include any machine-made products, any flavored products in the definition of a premium cigar. And that's something that PCA contends is accurate, along with CRA. But we know that our members carry other products. And like, if you're a factory that's producing, let's say 10% flavored product, should you have to undergo these crazy regulations that are coming out now, the tobacco manufacturing practices, which close the period for open comment closes October 6th. They just extended it. Should they have to comply with it and make almost like lab-like settings in these, very rustic factories in rural Honduras, Dominican Republic, and Nicaragua? Like, it would be difficult to comply in the United States. It is meant for pharmaceutical and food products. So, the fight still continues. Definitely a burden off our shoulders. Everybody was obviously excited. I wish it was the decision came out, during the trade show like it did the previous year. So the decision came out a day before the trade show last year, and then the remedy just came out last month. So the courts move pretty slowly, but nonetheless they got it right on this one.
Absolutely. One thing I'm unsure of, and I imagine other people are, do we know what the implications are going to look like with this victory? Or is that still one of those that's still yet to be seen, kind of how that will impact both the cigar industry from a manufacturer side, but also a consumer side?
So there's a couple things, and some of them are conjecture, some of them are actual physical realities at this point. So I mentioned this was kind of the third part. Well, the first two parts, one were warning labels for premium cigars. So you don't have to have the warning labels. You don't have to have them on the individual cigars. Things like that. That was struck down. Part one.
It keeps my boxes prettier. I can tell you that right now.
Absolutely. There's nothing worse than seeing those plain boxes and then they've got to cover up the actual band of the cigar. I think of like Canada, who has those regulations where it just black and it ruins such artist.
Yeah, it's right.
So that's a direct result of the litigation. The second piece was the pre-market review substantial equivalence requirements. Now that was testing that would increase the overall cost to bring a cigar to market, and it would prohibit a lot of innovation in new cigars that didn't have a predicate date from coming to market. That was previously struck down.
And the date is arbitrary to begin with.
Oh, yeah. So arbitrary and capricious. This one, there's a couple direct effects. Sampling. That's one that, you can have retailers provide samples to their customers. user fees. Premium Cigars would have to pay. They were the second largest contributor to the user fee pool that funds the Center for Tobacco Products. And we have been saying for years that Premium Cigars are paying for the regulation of e-cigarettes and vaping, because that's where a lot of CTP's resources have been directed. So the user fees go away. The other thing is, Cigars for Warriors and a lot of the things that they do. Now you can have, direct contributions of cigars by the manufacturers to organizations like Cigars for Warriors or the Troops. That's kind of within that sampling framework. Mm-hmm. But overall, the decision, keeps costs from escalating astronomically, and it allows us to have a robust marketplace with new products, limited editions. I mean, if you had the regulations that the FDA had planned for premium cigars go into effect, it wouldn't be it wouldn't be viable to have limited editions or do a lot of things like what you all do with CigarClub and other companies out there. So, they're still trying to poke us with new regulations, but with these wins, we have the data, the research, and the precedent from the courts to fight back even more aggressively. And that's where you see, look at our blog posts and our tone. Like, we're going after the FDA. We're going after anti-tobacco groups because they're conflating us with cigarettes or e-cigarettes or other products. And we're not going to have it. Like,
hell yeah.
They want prohibition. There's no way that we're going to go for it. And we're going to call out their manipulation and their path towards, not affording legal adults the opportunity to purchase their preferred adult product.
Yeah, well, absolutely. You guys have legal standing now to be able to take the fight forward.
Right here is your benchmark. What would Sam do? What would Sam Adams do? That's the question you ask at every turn.
What an incredible victory. I know the moment that came through, I think my Instagram was just full of celebratory posts from cigar manufacturers and consumers. Yep. I know when I got back into premium cigars, I had smoked during college, and my father grew up smoking, or I grew up around my dad who smoked cigars. And it was right around 2016. I remember going to my first, vendor or show, not a show. What's the word I'm looking for? Event. Yeah. And they were like, we can't give out samples for people to try anymore or any of that. And that's kind of how I learned and started following PCA and kind of the fight against FDA and regulation. So it was really great to see that first victory, that victory rather, recently.
And what's great about this year, I mean, this has been the best year for PCA and our advocacy in its history. I mean, the court case obviously is huge, but at the state level, we had more positive legislation cross the finish line than negative legislation. We have passed tax caps in the last 3 years. Working with my colleague Glenn Loop, there has not been a single tax increase at the state or federal level on premium cigars, and we've rolled back a lot of indoor smoking prohibitions in localities, and are affording opportunities where people can apply to open up a cigar lounge or a cigar bar. We've kind of really turned the narrative where we're not on the defensive anymore. And that's the beauty of this decision of now it's like we can go on the offensive. Like it felt like ever before then we were always careful, make sure we don't want to upset the apple cart. You got to throw in some compliments here and there to FDA to make sure that you don't offend them too much. And it's like, you were wrong. You didn't follow the law. And if you do it again, we're going to sue you again. And our track record is 3-0. You've lost 3 times. How much taxpayer money have you wasted? And you better think about it before you do it again, because you're only going to see the same result that you saw in these past three cases.
Absolutely. And I'm going to tie it to Grant. It's Grant going on the offensive finally and not being on the back foot and be able to start making his push south. So what an incredible victory. What an incredible cigar, incredible story. John, Josh, it's both been an honor and pleasure to have both of you on. We could probably sit here and talk history all day. Easily could. I'd have no. I'll light up another cigar. And we do have a question of the show that we like to round out every show with. And John, I'm going to throw this to you, being our first time on the show for us. We have a question coming in from Mike, and this is a wide open question. He just says, "What's the best advice that you have for a new cigar smoker?"
The best advice, not to burn the wrapper so that it gets soot on there so you feel sick the next morning from smoking a cigar.
Hey, that's a great one.
I would begin with the Dominican smokes. Oddly enough, if you pick a Dominican blend, certainly in the long filler, and smoke a Gordo, which is probably counterintuitive.
Okay.
The Gordos tend to mellow out as you smoke them, and they're easy to they stay lit, which is good. So most people think they want a small cigar, but the Robustos Edward the First. Excuse me, not Edward the First. That's from the 1300s. Edward the Eighth, I guess, is famously asked for a more stout cigar, and that he was getting from Havana, and he effectively invented. He wanted a more robust cigar. That's where the Robusto came from. So a lot of times they'll pick a short smoke, and the Robustos, even if they're in a mild blend, smoke a little bit more boldly, I would say. So a nice Churchill is probably where I would start. And don't be afraid to experiment.
Yeah, I think it's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many different cigars and styles out there. Just because you don't like one doesn't mean you don't necessarily like cigars. I think, at the end of the day, I think there's a cigar for everyone. Sometimes you just kind of have to try a few before you may land on something that works for your palate. And then, honestly, I think once you find that cigar, then you're eventually going to like every cigar out there, or
That's
most
exactly
of the cigars out
right.
there.
Yeah,
Yep.
You definitely go through a learning curve, and it's wonderful. The curve turns into a circle, and you get to encapsulate everything that you've probably rejected early on. And it has a lot to do with what you're drinking, how much food you've had, all those type, variables come into play. But definitely, learn how to light a cigar properly. I've had so many people that get the lighter and they don't realize that when they're using a butane lighter, that if they put that flame too close to the cigar, especially in a single torch lighter, they're putting butane into their cigar, and so they need.
I always say you walk it towards it.
Yeah, you want to use the way chemistry works is you have the fuel, then you have the carbon molecule separating from the oxygen, and then the oxygen burns the hottest, and it's at the far end. So get a 3-torch lighter and keep it literally that far away from your cigar after you've got toasted the foot, and that'll keep that butane from coming into the cigar. That's why people feel sick the next day, is because they've literally soaked their foot of their cigar with butane. I
always walk it towards it and look for it to start to ignite, and as soon as it does, you're in that sweet spot.
You need to pull
more
away.
More than likely, you won't even see the flame to it.
You need to be out here when you've got the foot done, and not like that. So
exactly. Well, we appreciate everything. I am down to a nubbit on this one. Beautiful ash. I mean, smoke and burn. I haven't had to touch this up, and it's 90% humidity where I'm at here in Auburn, Alabama. So
wow.
Incredible cigar. Thank you for letting us introduce it to our members. Josh, thank you again for letting us be a part of your third release now, I believe. It's an honor. It's incredible. Everyone loved the typewriter, and I know everyone's going to love the Lobbyist. So much that we're going to do a giveaway. So I want to know, everyone, comment below. Let us know what you're currently smoking, and then we'll select a winner, and we'll get a 5-pack out to you. Once again, let us know in the comments below what you're currently smoking. We'd love to know it. Easy enough, nothing crazy. Thank you all again, gentlemen, for joining us. Griff, any final departing words?
No, thank you guys so much. Really enjoyed the cigar. Always enjoy the conversation.
Absolutely.
And excited to have this in boxes. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you guys
Can't
for your
wait
time.
to have a cigar and a drink with you guys, either in the DC area or Erie or Atlanta.
Yeah.
soon. So
Absolutely.
Likewise.
And I do want to know, apologize I didn't throw this in earlier. I want to know, Josh, where can everyone find you? And John, where can everyone find you? Social media, websites, etc.
Yeah, I think my main thing is premiumcigars.org with PCA. These are novelty projects that mean a lot to me personally. On my day job, my primary focus with everything is the advocacy to defend the industry, to defend members like John and like you guys. If you want to get involved in advocacy, obviously with the cigars that I'm releasing, I'm not, selling these to make money myself. I encourage people to support the partner organization or partners like Liberty Cigar Company, like Luminary Distilling as it relates to the spirits for this one, and, our members like CigarClub. So you can connect with me, Joshua at premiumcigars.org.
Wonderful.
So, we're not on Instagram or Facebook or any place like that. So I live in the 18th century, obviously. But the only place you can get that Grant cigar is from you guys up until October. I'm releasing it on his birthday in October. So, but if they want it, they need to contact you guys. But we have obviously all the other cigars on our website, libertycigars.com.
Awesome.
Excellent. Well, there you have it, folks. Highly recommend trying all the other Liberty cigars that John's got available. Amazing stories, amazing artwork, from top to bottom. Absolutely wonderful. So thank you all again for joining us for another Cigar Club podcast. I'm Pugh. Until next time, happy smoking.
Cheers, guys.